Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, Department Overhaul. Another new advisory council at CYFD begins its work, but can it make a dent in the systemic issues plaguing the agency? And
this is our land. This is land that we, the American people, all own together.
Our Land begins a series examining access to one of our state's prized nature preserves, Valles Caldera. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. A decision from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is clearing the way to send tens of thousands of tons of spent nuclear waste to be stored here in New Mexico. We've told you about the plan from Holtec International, and earlier this week, the NRC approved the company's license. Coming up in the second half of the show, Our Land's Laura Paskus explains the environmental risks that will come with that waste. Two former New Mexico State basketball players are speaking up about alleged sexual harassment, assault, and intimidation on the team. At the bottom of the hour, I ask our line opinion panelists if university officials are being held accountable. We're also getting ready for a decision from the state Supreme Court that could reopen a proposed merger involving the state's largest electric utility. I'll ask the panel if that serves the best interests of the public. But we start the show this week inside the state's Children, Youth, and Families Department, where a new advisory council meant to guide reforms at the department meets for the first time. Let's get to the line. Welcome to our line opinion panelists for the week. We're joined in studio this week by former state representative Justine Fox Young. So glad to have you back at the table. A warm welcome back to retired reporter Steve Terrell, who spent decades at the Santa Fe New Mexican, and I mean decades. And former state senator Dee Dee Feldman, she's here almost a decade in our state legislature. We start this week with a look at a new council appointed to advise the state Children, Youth, and Families Department. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham created the council through an executive order meant to restructure the department she's called, quote, dysfunctional. Now, the group held its only scheduled public meeting last week when acting CYFD Secretary Teresa Casados introduced 6 members. Now, they include a former CYFD secretary, we'll talk about that, a child advocate, a foster care support provider, and more. Now, during Thursday's meeting, each council member explained how their backgrounds will inform their priorities. We'll get into those priorities as we move through this conversation. But let's start here with the makeup of the group. Senator, let me start with you. Are these the voices CYFD needs to hear from right now, the makeup of this group? How does it settle in your gut?
Well, you know, this commission comes on the heels of a previous commission, which actually had a rather wide representation from the community. This one is a little tighter, I think. Although one of the things that interested me was the fact that Sandra Begay, who is a judge in children's court, apparently withdrew from this commission. And one of the recommendations of the previous commission was that there be more Native American involvement and more attention given to placements.
Do we know why she withdrew her name? Is any reporting on that out
I
there?
do not know. Maybe somebody else does. But I don't know. I mean, there are so many withdrawals, including the secretary that resigned and now is on the commission.
Well, it's the withdrawal period of the administration. We're at that point.
I guess so.
That's a point. That's a point.
So.
Yeah. By the way, I know you know this, but it's Judge Catherine Begay.
Catherine Begay.
Right. I know you know that as well. You know, the council doesn't have a timeline in place for any action. Its only department-issued priorities are retaining foster families and employees. And Justine, those are important goals, but you know, given the concerns about accountability within the department, should the council have any specific mandates to get after, or is this just feeling just a little loose here?
Council and mandates are like oil and water. I guess I'll just back up and say,
Please.
you know, the problems at this agency are so long-standing and so intractable that I hesitate to sit here and say I have solutions, and so I you know, I'm oddly tentative, you know, Gene, but we always have a council when we don't have solutions. We always have a council when nobody wants to be accountable, and I think that's where we are. I think this is a missed opportunity for the administration to really lay out some hard plans and really look at true reform, which is creating a vacuum and allowing the Attorney General and others to start looking at, okay, well, what are we really going to do, maybe on a case-by-case basis. Raul Torres has said, I'm coming in, you guys can ignore my legislative initiatives, the governor can poo-poo it. I'm going to use my my authority and come in where I can and address some of these systemic issues of racism. And so I think that's a real missed opportunity for the government, and I think it's really problematic because things are being addressed so piecemeal. So I don't have high hopes for the commission, but I'm not sure a mandate would get us there. But we need good leadership, and instead we have an interim secretary who's not answering questions. Well, maybe we're going to have closed door meetings. Maybe we'll let you know what we're up to. And that's not a good start.
It is kind of the signal, isn't it, of what Justine just mentioned. Some of the meetings are going to be for the public, some of them are not. Let me kind of peel back in history, though, Steve Terrell, on Justine's point here. The last advisory board, the Enhancing Delivery of Services Steering Committee, that was what the name of it was, finished its work, submitted its recommendation, no discussion about turning them into policy. And what happened was during last week's meeting, a former member of the steering committee spoke up, calling it insulting and disrespectful to disregard the hundreds of hours that was put in. Does that speak to a disconnection here? Like something's not quite stitched together here.
When in doubt, start a committee. Yeah, it really does. And that's, they're not the only agency that's done this through the years. I remember they're going to have a study and it's going to lay on a shelf and pretty soon someone will just toss it. And the whole lack of transparency. I know they had one meeting public recently, but maybe we'll have some more, and maybe we'll have closed door meetings. It seems like what's going on here, and I agree with Justine. Complete missed opportunity.
When you think about it, Senator, no account. Who's the one to put the mandate down? I guess that's my question. If folks are looking for a mandate, it can only come from a couple of folks, right? It can't come from inside their own body. Do I have that wrong?
Well, I mean, there are mandates and there are recommendations, and they can come from on high, or they can come from an outside ombudsman, or they can come from the attorney general.
Or the courts can say,
or the court,
Right.
or the court, which is already active here. And still, the change has not come. That has been embedded in the recommendations and the internal mandates. So there really is, it is an intractable problem. And just imagine what it would be like to work for CYFD.
True.
Imagine what it would be like to go into somebody's home as a social worker and know that the decision that you make is whether that person gets to see their child or not. No wonder there's a morale problem. No wonder there's every committee that meets says there needs to be a culture change.
That's right.
And that the department needs to have, an internal reckoning about, is this a safe place to work? Is there a psychologically nurturing environment within the department?
That's right.
Do caseworkers have enough time
That's right.
to handle all the psychological cases and stresses
Are
that
there
they
enough
face?
caseworkers?
And are there, and right.
They've already admitted there's
and are
not.
we taking on the problems we can really fix? Because some, we tag CYFD with failing every time something happens to a kid, and it's not always the agency's.
Let me button down this transparency thing with you, Justine. The acting secretary has said that the council members will be empowered to hold public meetings or forums around the state on their own, but no specifics were given. Was that sort of a kick down?
Yeah, totally punting.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And I don't know why. The governor came out strong with his executive order, laid out something of an agenda this session.
Right.
And I'm not privy to the details. I don't know where it fell apart, but that you can't start your DOA. You can't start like that.
Right, exactly right. I'm not sure if that answers the issue. Let me go to something else. I'll start with Steve. 3 years ago, you might recall, Steve, I know you did, the state settled what's referred to as Kevin's lawsuit, of course, which alleged trauma-impacted children in New Mexico foster care lacked safe, appropriate, and stable placements and behavioral health services in the state system. 2 court-mandated annual reviews followed the settlement. The state received a failing grade each time. Is there enough urgency to fulfill the court-ordered reforms made in Kevin's settlement before we get on to something else?
It seemed just a huge mess, just a huge cesspool, really. What if they, if they 2 failing grades in a row,
Right.
and they're heading for a third probably. No, I'm not sure what needs to be done here, but again, what they're doing ain't working.
Yeah. I apologize. The Kevin S. settlement. Sorry about
Yeah.
the guy, not Kevin settlement. My fault there. Do you have a thought on that, Senator?
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is that the Kevin S. settlement, as I understand it, was that the department was supposed to provide care knowing that it was trauma-induced.
Right.
This is the
Right.
term now,
That's
the
right.
trauma-induced. And yet, the department, in its toughest cases, needs support, behavioral health support from other agencies, and the services just aren't there, especially for the teenagers who are the real tough cases. They can't even get anybody to house the
That's right.
teenagers.
There's no overnight
and so
housing
they're
for-
now, in homeless shelters. And that needs to be addressed, but it's not just that department. There has to be help in terms of behavioral health services and other backup housing options for this population. So the department has got to work with others. And I have heard the Teresa Casados talk about that and how she wants CYFD to feel that that other agencies have their backs.
Gotcha.
And I think before you can really do that, the administration has to air all those gory details. I mean, that's what an executive order should say. It should say, we don't want any teenagers in housing shelters,
That's
in
right.
homeless shelters. I mean, we're going to end that this year. But nobody wants to talk about it.
One more thing before we get out of the subject. The governor, as you folks remember, pocket vetoed a bill that would have created a new civil rights division to sue the state on behalf of children, quote, harmed by government neglect and incompetence, end quote. Instead of giving the AG that authority, the governor created this council, which is how we start this conversation.
This is Raul Torres' initiative.
That's right. That's right. What does that say about the administration's commitment to the well-being of the state? That seems like a reasonable step to a lot of people. What do you think about that? What Mr. Torres wants?
I don't know that I know enough to have a position about whether another office is going to fix it, but I do think it was not well orchestrated, and I did not hear the governor articulating a clear position as to why she opposed it. Now, she pocket vetoed the bill. She never put out any message, and so it sure looks bad. And you got Mr. Torres, you got the AG, I think sincerely, looking to attack this problem, and which is unusual, and this is a problem that doesn't always sit front and center in the press.
That's right.
So I think, again, it's a missed opportunity. I mean,
Are the agencies rowing in the same direction here? Or are they rowing against each other, going in a circle? I mean, Mr. Torres, that's a reasonable request, it would seem.
Well, I mean, and it was the idea that there has to be some sort of outside oversight, some sort of grievance procedure that is not just going back to the department. That was in all the recommendations from these other commissions.
Thank you for saying
and
that.
The legislature also turned down a lot of the recommendations of these commissions too. It wasn't just the governor vetoing that civil rights section,
there
but
were
it was
30 legislative proposals.
I don't know, but they had a proposal for an outside ombudsman that was turned
That's
down.
right. Yeah.
They had a proposal from Representative Marion Matthews for increased transparency, and that was turned down by the legislature. So I don't know exactly what recourse there is right now.
Right, that's a good point. Let's finish with this, Steve. What access does the department owe to foster parents? Meaning in this, youth care, other stakeholders in the equation, what do we owe these people?
Apparently, a lot of them are owed a lot of money.
Well, there you go.
and that they haven't received. No, they definitely should have a seat at the table, and they're directly affected.
Yeah. Same, Senator.
I
Same thing.
agree.
What do
I
we owe
totally
them?
agree.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the current commission has a foster family in there or as part of their members. I think the other one did.
Okay.
But it seems to me that there's a former foster child that's part of the commission,
I see.
but not a current foster family.
That's interesting. Does that make a difference in your mind?
Well, you know, it's foster families are where it's at. I mean, that's who we're relying on to take care of.
Holding payment and ignoring their grievances is not a great recruitment strategy.
It's a hard job,
That's
too.
right. Good last point there from Justine. Thanks to our line opinion panel. We'll be back here at the table in less than a minute to talk about the latest development in an appeal that could send the failed PNM Avangrid merger back to the Public Regulation Commission for reconsideration.
Our concern has been we want the public to be able to access the land easily, but we're also concerned and mindful of the same thing that the Park Service is up there. They don't want the place to just be overrun with hundreds and hundreds of people just running around doing anything they want, anytime they want. We agree with the Park Service that there should be restrictions to protect the place. We're just a little concerned right now that the restrictions are a little bit too tight.
Welcome back to our line opinion panelists. The revamped State Public Regulation Commission could soon have to reconsider a proposed merger between the state's largest electric utility, you knew who that is, that's PNM, and international energy company Avangrid. Now, the state Supreme Court will decide whether to send the merger back to this new 3-member PRC for reconsideration. And if that happens, one of those 3 commissioners has already recused himself from any discussions or decisions related to the merger. Patrick O'Connell made that decision in January. Now, he had previously served as a policy analyst for Western Resource Advocates and gave sworn testimony in support of stipulations for the merger. He also worked in various roles for PNM from '99 to 2019. So voters used to choose 5 PRC commissioners, they might recall. Now the governor appoints 3. And Steve, that means fewer perspectives involved, especially with Mr. O'Connell's recusal. What does the new setup of the commission do for public trust? Should we feel better about this?
I don't know. You know, I supported the move. I voted for the move to have it appointed by the governor because the PRC had a long legacy of electing bozos, basically, and a lot of
At 95 grand a year, you know.
yeah,
it attracted a lot of
and a
voters.
lot of cases where you know, ex parte communications with PNM and others, and so that's their heritage. I thought, well, this will make it better, and now I'm not sure. And you know, if there is a tie, I don't know what happens if there's a tie vote. I suspect there won't be.
Right.
And the optics of that is just terrible.
Right. Was this not discussed in certain circles before we went to this style? Did we all get bamboozled here? Is that what you're saying? Or
I'm not sure. And some people warned, the governor would just appoint cronies and stuff. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but you know, if they just go and vote against the PRC, this new unelected commission, and they go and vote against this decision from, was it last year or before?
Yeah. 2021.
Yeah, it's going to look bad, and you know, it just doesn't quite pass the smell test. And
Steve makes a good point here. How should we consider that the previous commission unanimously voted down this merger? Voted it down. Cited Avangrid's poor performance record in the Northeast, questionable corporate practices as the main reasons. The utility appealed, of course, as Steve mentioned or alluded to there, ruling a month later. But in March of this year, the new PRC commissioners joined with those utilities to ask the Supreme Court to dismiss the appeal, kick the case back to the PRC for reconsideration. What are we doing here? That's my question here.
It just really looks bad.
Yeah.
It just really looks bad. It's been a tragedy of errors, I think, from the very beginning. The popular vote, the amendment that was passed in 2020 was passed on the basis, like Steve said, that the previous commission was unprofessional, they were bozos, they didn't know what they were doing. Well, upon further investigation, that election was investigated by the Ethics Commission, and it was found that the people putting out all this information about how unprofessional and we need a professional approach was paid for by Exxon.
That's right.
And so then we had the appointment of the new commission, in which the Speaker of the House appointed himself to be a part of the selection process. Then the new commission was selected, and one of the members was immediately found not to be qualified, had to remove himself from there, and then a new one was appointed immediately by the governor. And it looks very much like the train is on the tracks for these new decision makers to overturn the decision that was made earlier, and to do so rather quickly,
Right.
without much public input. Although I think that is a hope that if the court remands it back to the PRC,
That's right.
there will be public input,
That's right.
because without it, we will be, I think, victims of the biggest PR shuffle that we've seen in a long time.
Senator, what does this new commission see in the deal that their predecessors didn't? That's the confusing part here.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's normal for those that, for a utility, I think, that receives a negative opinion from the PRC to take it to court.
Sure. Yeah.
What is not normal is for the commission then to join with the plaintiffs
Right.
in the and ask the court to overturn a previous decision. That's really unusual.
Good points there. Justine, new allegations of misconduct surrounding the merger after recent disclosure of ex parte communications. Here we go again between PRC commissioners and attorneys for those utilities. First of all, for the folks, what is ex parte for communications? Let's explain that first in this context and why they're
Sure.
problematic.
So ex parte was outside the commission process, and it sounds like the lawyers from the utilities were talking to the lawyers from the PRC. I think there's so much scrutiny and paranoia, not wrongfully, and skepticism for a few reasons going back, and that is that as part of this merger, or this attempted merger, the shareholders of PNM spent a ton of money on a huge advertising campaign, and that was 24 hours a day on TV and in the paper, et cetera, instead of coming forward and saying, hey, we are proposing rate reductions. We're going to take this money and propose rate reductions. This is consumer friendly. They kicked and screamed in terms of every concession. So, separation of the companies, no self-serving transactions, rate reductions. When you already have consumer bases across the country screaming that Avangrid is a terror, and then you have PNM, refusing to make these concessions up front, I think there is a long history of skepticism about this deal. And so that's a problem. I'm not so worried about the ex parte communications, because these are lawyers talking about how they're going to proceed in this case. Whether or not it was a good PR decision or good policy for the commission to join, that's a separate question. But it's unusual, and I think there's skepticism for that reason, because at the end of the day, we want to see consumers paying lower rates.
That's right.
And PNM
That's right.
blew a bunch of money trying to sell this deal
That's right.
to the public.
Interesting points there. I want to got a couple of follow-ups on your rant there. It was epic, right? That was a capital R rant. I loved it, absolutely. Do these one-sided communications automatically amount to a violation of public trust here, Steve? Or are we watching this too closely? Are consumers watching this as closely?
Probably most consumers don't care.
Yeah.
But those of us familiar.
What their bill says at the end.
There you
That's
go.
right. And I had a high bill last time. It was,
Thanks for the reminder.
yeah, it just looks bad. It's just the optics and the missed opportunities here, and it just seems like this is just PNM trying to pull another one.
Don't you guys think with all this, they should start with a new proposal if it comes back to the PRC and really take comment?
Thank
That's
you.
what they say they're going to do. That's
Yeah.
what Avangrid's point is if it goes back to the PRC, they have new proposals. They have new benefits for New Mexico
You're
that they're going
skeptical.
to be presenting if this is actually reopened and not just reheard or reconsidered.
That's right.
Which is what they're arguing about more recently.
Dee Dee, what do you make of this, another little layer of weirdness here, guys, on this story? We have the nonprofit organization New Energy Economy. We're all familiar with those folks. But we've got accusations. They've rolled out, they have an agenda. Let's get serious here. But very few of the facts they've rolled out in opposition have been challenged. That changed last week, as you might have heard, when Avangrid sent a cease and desist letter to NEE accusing the ED of defamation, when she said during an interview that Avangrid and its Spanish parent company literally have bought out judges, bribed judges, end quote.
What are we getting a taste of how it'll be in the future? Right?
Is that what we're hearing here?
Really
is this how the court case is going to go? These kind of bombs being thrown? Wow, Senator, what do you make of that?
Well,
That's
I mean,
amazing.
and then they throw a bomb back and think, oh, she's a socialist. She wants a government takeover of utilities. So I mean, yeah, welcome to New Mexico.
Well, what's the public supposed to make out of this if we got a brass knuckle fight going on here with these people?
Well, it's just another saga in the PRC from the very beginning when it was established in, I guess it was 1999 or so. It was established as an elected body, remember, because they didn't think that the three-member corporation commission and public utility corporation, I guess it was called.
Yep.
They didn't think that there was enough public input, and it was just done behind closed doors. So. Then we got the elected PRC.
That's right. Well, I have a question on that. That's right. Just to finish with this, Steve, it's interesting to me. Earlier the year, the governor she announced she'd create a tribal advisory council that would make non-binding recommendations to the PRC, and this came about after tribal members were passed over, for that three-member commission. Is this a appropriate make good? Is this going to be just window dressing? What are we looking at here with these kind of tribal perspective is pretty important on this merger. You would think this would be a louder voice here.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, another topic, when in doubt, form a committee. And it's, I see it as window dressing. Yeah. And, they're perfect. They'd be within their right to just totally ignore anything this council or this committee comes up with.
Right.
And they don't have any real power, and they could have another one of these studies laying on top of the others and nobody ever reads.
That's right. Don't forget, Justine, 3 indigenous groups sued the state, you know what I mean, over the restructuring of the PRC, and the court ruled in favor of the state. So again, where does that leave tribes in this conversation?
It leaves them out.
Yeah.
And the governor has not been vocal on that or on the merger. I mean, I haven't seen any official position. This is a huge deal for the state. I think we need to hear from her.
Yeah. DD, PRC says it will reopen public meetings on the merger if the Supreme Court sends the case back to the commission. Why can't they just agree to do that? Why does it have to be an if it gets kicked back? That's so crazy.
Well, it's closed.
Well,
but
it's
closed.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's closed now. It's been turned down.
Right.
As we speak. But just getting back to the other thing about the Native Americans, I mean, the Native Americans are the ones that works at the power plants in the Four Corners area, and they're the ones that have a lot of the resources that are no longer being used for coal-fired generations. So, they certainly have a stake in this, and they're not given an official one.
Oh, the PRC. What a journey. Going back, remember the original map with the pie-shaped districts that all kind of dovetailed into the Albuquerque area? It was like the craziest thing in the world, and here we are, still arguing years later. Thanks again to our Line of Opinion panelists. We'll be back here at the table for one final discussion when we react to the latest reporting on alleged harassment and sexual assault within New Mexico State University basketball. That's in less than 15. Right now, we shift our attention to one of the most beautiful spots in our state, the Valles Caldera in the Jemez Mountains. The federal government bought the land in 2000, God, seems like a long time ago, for about $100 million. And since then, its management has seen some complications. Our Land senior producer, Laura Pasca, sits down with watchdog Tom Reby of Caldera Action to talk about illegal cattle grazing, public access and input, and the future challenges facing the preserve.
Tom Reby, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, it's a pleasure to be here.
So the Valles Caldera in the Jemez Mountains has a long history with humans, but we're going to talk about the last 23 years. So in 2000, the U.S. government bought the Valles Caldera from a family, from private landowners. And first it was managed by a trust, then it was managed by the U.S. Forest Service, and now the National Park Service. In terms of public lands, is that usual? Why are things so complicated with this piece of land?
Well, it all goes back to the late Senator Pete Domenici, who in 1998, 1999, there were a bunch of public people who were pushing to have the property purchased by the federal government and made into some kind of a public land. And that was resisted somewhat by Senator Domenici, who said at the time that there was too much public land in New Mexico already. So he came up with this sort of Cato Institute quasi-libertarian model, which was the trust. And so he agreed to buy it, and Senator Bingaman worked very hard to make it a balanced experiment. So it was an experimental land regime that went on from 2000 to 2014. And ultimately the land was owned by the Forest Service during that time. So they were the owners in the background there, but the trust was this funny management scheme that was an experiment. And we meaning Caldera Action and a lot of the people who were involved in getting it purchased were not happy with the trust and didn't think it was sustainable. It had a lot of problems, and I won't go into that. But in any case, we worked with Senator Bingaman and then with Senator Heinrich, and ultimately got the place transferred to the National Park Service in 2014. So that was a great success, and we've been very pleased. I think over the long run, that's the best place for it.
Right. So cattle grazing is still allowed within the trust under the enabling legislation, but your group and others are worried about cattle that are grazing illegally within the preserve. What's the complication with that?
So what happened was they put in, back when it was under the trust, they were calling it a working ranch. And anyway, that was a perspective that was part of the trust. When we got it transferred to the Park Service, Senator Tom Udall wanted to have some amount of livestock grazing to continue. So the Park Service fenced off one small area that's away from all the streams and said this is a legal grazing area. And they actually have been using that as a grazing area and charging about $20 an animal unit month in that area, which is basically about 20 times more than ranchers pay on U.S. Forest Service land across the fence. The rest of the preserve outside of that little fenced area is closed to cattle grazing. So what we've been concerned about is cows that are coming in off U.S. Forest land, U.S. Forest Service land to the north of the preserve through fences that are down, through fences that are cut sometimes, through that kind of thing. And they are grazing in areas that have been, a great deal of effort has been made to restore these areas from past overgrazing, from back when it was private land. So we're very concerned about that and working hard with a bunch of other organizations to get those cattle out of there permanently. And it's turning out to be a very complicated process.
Right. So you have some other concerns, and I'd like to talk about access. Who can visit the preserve? How do you visit the preserve? And what are your concerns about the public's ability to come to the preserve?
Well, the National Park Service is obviously it's a federal agency. They manage all of the most valuable lands in the United States. The Yosemite, Yellowstone, the National Mall in Washington, D.C., lots of historic sites and other parks around New Mexico. They are, this is our land. This is land that we, the American people, all own together. Our concern has been we want the public to be able to access the land easily, but we're also concerned and mindful of the same thing that the Park Service is up there. They don't want the place to just be overrun with hundreds and hundreds of people just running around doing anything they want, anytime they want. We agree with the Park Service that there should be restrictions to protect the place. We're just a little concerned right now that the restrictions are a little bit too tight. They have a gate that's up by the highway, and that gate is only open from 9 to 5. And this is a huge preserve. It's an 89,000 acre preserve. So if you, as a member of the public, want to go way out in the backcountry somewhere, it's tough to go out there and then be back to the gate by 5 when they close the gate. So we're concerned about that. Another thing they're doing is they're now making it so a lot of the reservations to go into the largest part of the preserve will now be online through recreation.gov. We're concerned that there's not enough opportunity for the public, and that too many of the public who want to come spontaneously, like if you drive up from Albuquerque and just want to show up, you may encounter some restrictions in going into the backcountry. That being said, the majority of the Valle Grande, which is the big valley that's visible from the highway, will now be open without any permits or that kind of thing. Again, we've still got the gate problem for that area, but the public will be able to come to that and go hiking or skiing or fishing or whatever with no problem. So I would say overall, it's public land. There are trails you can access directly off the highway with no permit, and you're welcome to do that. It's your land, so people should not feel restricted.
So we shot a show there in 2017, and I know there are scientists who are doing work out there. And certainly I've seen movie and TV productions like Longmire, so I know what the views look like. And even though I feel like I am pretty public lands savvy, whether I have tried to plan a trip by looking at their website or just showing up, like I don't feel like I know how to access what the preserve offers. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for me. And I feel like if I can't do that and I don't feel comfortable, there are thousands and thousands of New Mexicans who don't.
Yes, and I would say that big picture, the Park Service, the National Park Service right now is doing a general management plan for the place. And once that's approved and in place, I think we're going to see a lot more trail signage, a lot more interpretive signs explaining the volcanism and the native history and that sort of thing up there. So I think things will get better. But for right now, one has to go to the visitor center and get some direction. You're also welcome to just go off in any direction you want, especially in the grasslands, and you're unlikely to get lost. But I think there will be more direction and more signage in the future once their general management plan is done. But in the meantime, I think it's important for people to go meet the rangers, tell them what you want to do, and they can give you some pointers on where to most easily do that.
And just lastly, you mentioned the recreation.gov reservation system, a management plan. Are these things that the public can weigh in on, or like how do we get more involved?
That's a very good question. The National Park Service has a philosophy and a direction from the director's office in Washington that they're supposed to involve the public in all of their major decisions. And we've been very concerned that for example, this recreation.gov and permit system for getting into the backcountry didn't have any public involvement. It may be that they will have that happen pretty soon, we hope. And this in terms of the general management plan, they will have public comment periods where people can tune into that and talk about that. I think that will be sometime in the next 6 months that we'll get our next 6 months to 1 year. I'm hoping it's sooner. The sooner they get their general management plan done, the better for all of us, because it'll really make the management of the place very cohesive and more professional, more like a national park that you'd visit elsewhere.
Right. Well, thank you, Tom. I know you've been a watchdog for a long time on the Caldera, and I sure appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it, and I do it for the people of New Mexico and for all Americans.
Thanks, Tom.
This week, the federal government gave a green light to Holtec International, which plans to bring commercial nuclear waste to New Mexico. Now, the company in the feds says the waste will only be here temporarily. It's a 40-year license. But since the U.S. doesn't have a permanent waste site, there's no place else for that waste to go. And no other states want it. There was other news, too, you might not have heard about. Our Land senior producer Laura Paskus has this.
On Monday, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission launched a special inspection at a uranium enrichment plant in Eunice, New Mexico. The federal body called safety issues there concerning, and they've already fined the company $70,000. That company, Louisiana Energy Services, broke ground on the plant in 2006. They came to New Mexico at the invitation of former Senator Pete Domenici, after Tennessee and Louisiana had opposed the plant. Other communities rejected the plant because they didn't want the radioactive waste. Tuesday, the NRC made another announcement, one I'm sure you've all heard about. The NRC issued a license for another private company, Holtec International, to build a nuclear waste dump. This one is different, of course, from the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, which already stores America's nuclear weapons waste near Carlsbad. Holtec has contracts to decommission nuclear power plants in places like New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. The company, the utilities that operated those plants, the communities that ran their homes, and economies with nuclear power, they all need some place to put that radioactive waste. And so does the federal government. Things have changed since WIPP came to New Mexico, even since Louisiana Energy Services located here. Today, all of the state's top elected officials, state and federal, oppose Holtec's plans. State lawmakers even passed a bill this year. Now, that bill doesn't stop or overrule the federal licensing process. What it does is prohibit New Mexico from issuing state permits that the for-profit company will need for things like hazardous waste storage and cultural resources clearance. There will be water permits and sanitary waste permits. And since the company has said it'll bring waste here by rail, Holtec will also need permits from the State Department of Transportation. From a legal standpoint, there's no precedent for what could happen if Holtec sues. And there aren't other state laws like this one. So if or when the company sues over these denied permits, it'll be a federal judge who decides whether New Mexico's law holds up. So I hear from our audience all the time. Some of you thought Senate Bill 53 would end Holtec's plans for New Mexico. Others now worry that the NRC's decision means more nuclear waste is definitely headed to New Mexico. But the reality is much more complicated, though a few things are very clear. The United States has a crisis on its hands. There are millions and millions of tons of waste from commercial nuclear power plants that will end up someplace. Now, more than ever, New Mexicans need to understand not just the technical and legal complexities, but the historical ones. And we need to know that each decision has consequences, and there is no easy path forward.
Laura will have more details in her Tuesday newsletter, Our Land Weekly. You can subscribe, by finding Our Land NM on Instagram. Now, back to the line. New Mexico State University is back in the national headlines this week after a report from ESPN detailing alleged harassment, sexual assault, and intimidation on the men's basketball team. It's just the latest in a series of scandals surrounding the team that started last December when police say NMSU player Mike Peake shot and killed UNM student Brandon Travis on campus here in Albuquerque. The team kept playing for 3 more months, but things fell apart in February after allegations surfaced about 3 players ganging up on a teammate and what police say included a possible incident of criminal sexual contact. Now, Chancellor Dan Arvizu canceled the season shortly afterwards, and then came the lawsuits. Mr. Arvizu resigned in April, 1 month after firing head basketball coach Greg Heier, but the same day, Mr. Arvizu stepped down from the university, re-signed athletic director Mario Mocha to a 5-year contract extension. Now, Steve, let me ask you this. How does an AD survive that many black eyes in that short a space of time? this is an amazing circumstance when you think about it.
This is groundbreaking. Yeah, it just really is amazing. And the whole thing just seems like rotten to the core there. I think they need a pretty big overhaul down there.
It's a lawsuit's the way to do it. Is this what we're down to? No one seems to want to do the right thing before the lawsuit gets thrown on the table.
Yeah, that's. I don't see what else they could do at this point because nothing else is happening.
Right. Dee Dee, one of the allegations in the lawsuit was that one of the players' father tried to reach Mr. Mochia, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name, to discuss the alleged assaults, but the AD did not return the calls.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing to me.
Yeah.
Trying to hear from a parent.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
And even worse than the hazing and the sexual assault is the coaches ignoring it, and others ignoring it as well. It really looks like a witch's cauldron down there, with sort of inner. I don't know, some sort of a cover-up kind of mentality that's going on that seems to have no end.
Accountability is a big theme at our table tonight, all the subjects we're talking about. And Justine, I just got to ask, does the contract extension now bring into question the decision-making of the Board of Regents? Has there been enough accountability?
Oh, I think it probably does. And I think Dee Dee's right. The cover-up is always worse, and I think we're going to find out there's a lot more than we even know about. I mean, I don't have any specialized knowledge about sports, Division I sports or sports in New Mexico, but just sitting where I do, this goes back way before that shooting. There were problems on the football team several years ago with those 2 African-American coaches getting fired, the racial epithets. Nothing was done, as far as I could tell.
That's right.
You had serious fights, brutalization on the basketball team. Nothing was done. You had this fight at the football game. All this could have been anticipated. I mean, maybe not specifically, but I'm pretty sure that this athletic director had to have been ignoring a lot of complaints for a long time. I mean, I'm not saying this is a Rick Pitino situation, but you can't have this much going on and coaches failing these kids for this long.
That's right.
And in such a widespread way without the whole administration knowing. And I think the regents have to be accountable. And so now we end up at this point, Gene, and I just, talking about failing the kids, this kid, I guess they're adults, but this student who's made these allegations, he's a Las Cruces kid. Playing Division I basketball.
That's right.
What does the school do? What does the coach do? What does the AD do? What do the regents do? They tell him, apparently, you need to transfer. Not, we're going to make this right. We are going to send a message not only to you, and this has upended your life, but to the whole community that this isn't going to be tolerated. No, we don't do that. We tell the kid, this is just how we do it at NMSU.
That's right.
And I find that to be the most appalling fact of all.
That's a well put there. Steve, a very telling quote here, NMSU's Vice Chair of Faculty Senate. This is in relation to the crazy raise we're going to talk about here. Quote, because there's so much churn in our upper administration, we never get to the point of hammering out who is actually accountable for upholding policies, end quote. That's very telling.
It's a good
you can't
point.
have churn and have policies being made.
That's right. It's I don't know what's going on there. Dee Dee mentioned the witches' coven. I don't think we can blame the witches on this one.
The whole time. This
Yeah.
athletic
Thank you.
director oversaw all of this. So while there may be some truth to that, the buck stops there.
How do we factor in, guys, the letter from the faculty that's now been distributed, and they're having a big problem with the raise and how it came down? This man gets an extension given to him on the last day of somebody going out the door, a senator. It just doesn't feel good to people when you think about this. If you were faculty in the business of teaching students to go out in the world and be productive citizens, you're seeing this whole sports meltdown. Wouldn't you call for an end of sports at some point? and say we need to,
Yes, if I was a faculty member there, I would be outraged.
Right.
Of course, I would be outraged even before the scandal to know that athletic directors and coaches get hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation, and I get $70,000 or $60,000, and I'm teaching kids some of the basics of what we think higher education should do. I mean, the whole thing does bring into question the larger matter of, are we overdoing the competition and the sports and the violence and the entertainment and downgrading the actual educational process, which often involves cooperation, collaboration, learning, telling the truth. It's
School of Higher Education. That's what you're talking about. I mean,
that's what we pay the state dollars to do.
That's right.
And that's what we promise our children.
That's right.
And this promise has been broken.
One of our regular panelists, as you all know, Dan Foley. Of course, you've served with Dan in the past. He has a son who played football down there, and it's interesting the points of view he brings up, Steve. That there's like a lot of lawsuits always floating around, and what that does to potential recruits. Who would want to go there? You see what I mean here? If you were an athlete,
exactly,
why would you want to go there?
Exactly, and it's just.
If you were an honorable coach, why would you want to go there?
Right, exactly right. Why would you be caught up in this?
Just, I don't know what they're looking for. And the basketball team is, they had to cancel. Who knows when it's coming back? And so, I agree with you, Dee Dee. I think that the whole shebang just seems rotten to the core.
Let me throw this in as well, guys. It's not the only lawsuit against the school. You might recall last year, Jane Doe alleged that a longtime professor with ties to the athletic department, quote, harassed and groomed female students for years, coercing them into sexual relations and bragging about the same, end quote. All the while school officials looked the other way. The plaintiff alleges she was sexually assaulted by the professor. If these incidents, Senator, were allowed to happen on top of everything else that we're talking about here, should we be asking how deep these problems run? I mean, again, kind of asking the same question over and over. How do we dig down to the bottom of this and uproot all of this if we got Jane Does of these kind of lawsuits as well?
Well, and before the lawsuits, there must have been other whistleblowers.
That's right.
And I noticed that one of the complaints was that these whistleblowers have been suppressed as well.
That's right.
And it's not just NMSU; it's also Eastern. Eastern has had a incident like this recently revealed through a lawsuit
about basketball players.
The women's basketball coach's husband. She sent them to him for therapy that was really sexual assault, and so there's a lawsuit there as well. So it's a big problem if it's not addressed quickly, and if the regents and the administration doesn't deal with it. I mean, there's going to be no
May I jump in?
choice.
On your point there about the administration, I think that's a very interesting point there. The governor, as you know, filed a anti-hazing legislation, I guess, Justine, we can call it. I'm not quite sure what it's designed to do. Was this a policy issue?
I don't know. I mean, what was done, if the allegations are true, what was done was illegal. I don't think the solution is another statute. We just need to open our eyes to what's happening there.
And but let's stay on this for a quick second. Again, is this another reason to just, I don't want to be incendiary here, burn it to the ground and just start over? I mean, Division I stuff, NMSU sells themselves around the country to powerhouse sports teams to get paid big money to get beaten up on. You know what I mean? It's just, for a lot of people, it's unseemly. It's not a good way to kind of do sport here.
I think it's a good time, and Dee Dee points out at the end of the day, there's taxpayer dollars going into this public institution that's a school of higher learning. It's a good time to assess what return we're getting.
Let me throw this on the table then. We do not have a unified upper education system like California does.
Right.
Is that the answer, Senator? Perhaps to get this tied a little bit closer, more accountability with a unified system with our schools, possibly?
Well, Well, that's a big question. I mean, that's a bigger question than just the athletic departments.
Right.
It's a question of like the state getting the biggest bang for its buck in terms of higher education.
That's right.
And not having the proliferation of branch colleges, community colleges, universities that each have their own regions, each have their own athletic department, each have their own. It's cost
Maybe
the
are
state.
not viable.
Yeah, which may not be viable, but you can't tell that to the small communities because it's like removing their hospital. These are jobs. These are identity. These are. So I think it would help in terms of setting the standards for what is not permissible.
That's right.
And maybe if there were hazing standards, we're one of 6 states that doesn't have a hazing law. And I agree with Justine, most of this stuff is against the law.
Right.
It is sexual assault.
That's right.
Or it is rape, or it is battery. But it's interesting that we're one of 6 states that don't have a hazing.
Reminds me of the cockfighting situation a few years ago when we were like one of 2 states that didn't have anti-cockfighting. I agree that's not going to solve everything, but I don't think it would be bad to have those that law.
Let me finish. To be fair to the governor, she also said it is the responsibility of higher ed leadership and governing boards to establish a safe, healthy environment for students, and I'm incredibly disappointed that it does not appear to be a priority at some of the state's public colleges and universities, end quote. Didn't quite name NMSU there, but fair point. Does that feel like she's getting...
Very controversial statement that she really put herself out there in terms of how to fix it.
Right, right. Maybe she should say something about state. Who knows? Thanks again to this brilliant panel. Be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics The Line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages, and catch any episodes you may have missed on the PBS app, your Roku, or Smart TV. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you all again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the viewers like you.